नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Purusha Shukta confirmed. Text number 17 onwards. Swadhishnayam pratapan prano bahishcha pratpati aso evam virajam pratpanstapi pranstapans tapti antar bahipaman. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord, known as Brahmjyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. The sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet of the deity known as Surya Narayan, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahmjyoti radiation or the impersonal feature of the Lord. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. So the universal form of the Lord is a secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. But the primary form of the Lord is Shyamsundar with two hands playing on his eternal flute. 75% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripad Vibhuti, and 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. So it's rough percentage given. It's called Tripad Vibhuti. Tripad means 3/4. So 3/4 of his energy or his opulence is in the spiritual world. And here it's called expansive radiation, Brahmjyoti, if you want to call it that, go with that. And 1/4 of the personal radiation or the Brahmjyoti, um, it expands all over the material universes. But this is just something for us to understand the expanse or the um, how big the spiritual world versus the material world is. But there is no limit of the spiritual world, that it's only this big. It's always expanding actually. There is no limit on it. So this is just for us to get some idea. Otherwise, I mean, everything is expanding in the spiritual world. And then Prabhupada, this is also explained and stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:42, where it is said that Yadyad Vibhutimat Sattvam Shrimat Urhitameva Tatat Avgachvam Mama Tejam Anshu Sambhavam. That whatever opulence you see, O Arjun, it's what? It's a part of my splendor. It's just a spark of my splendor. So, so we can't even understand the whole opulence of Krishna. Whatever we see, the opulence, it's just a spark of his splendor, and how much we can see anyway. And what he showed to Arjun was even much more. But even that, he said, it's just a spark. It's just a tiny, insignificant spark of my splendor. It's amazing who Krishna is, or what are his energies, what are his opulences. We can't even conceive of that. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy. The living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy, Tatastha Shaktis. External. Those who live within the spiritual expansion of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called the conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls. So if we just go with that 3:1 ratio, so to say the spiritual world is three times bigger than the material. Our material is 1/4 of the whole creation, and spiritual world is 3/4 of the creation. So how many living entities are here in the material world? It's innumerable, actually. Even just on my tip of my thumb, there are billions and billions of living entities. And so many microorganisms everywhere. So just imagine in the spiritual world, the ever liberated souls are how many? It's three times in the material world. So it's the number is mind-boggling actually. We can't even conceive of. That's why people, because they cannot conceive of all this, they say it's all mythology. It doesn't make sense. Of course, it doesn't make sense from our intelligence, from our analytical thinking power. But from Krishna's perspective, everything is possible. Only, just like I always give example of two examples. One is Kurukshetra, when the war was going to go on, and 18 days Mahabharat war went on, and it is mentioned in Mahabharata that 640 million people died in that war. 640 million. Kurukshetra, if you go to Kurukshetra, it's a small piece of land. How big is it? Not very big. And 640 million people, they were not just standing there, they were fighting, they were running around. Chariots were going, horses were running, elephants were running, so many things were going on. And this was just a war. And then there were camps where everybody would sleep at night. Then there were hospitals, then there were cooking areas where everything was cooked for everybody. So how much land everybody needed for the war? But Mahabharata cannot tell us lies that 640 million people died. So we have to understand Krishna can do anything. If Krishna wants, he can fit the whole population of the earth on the tip of his thumb, and still everybody will have enough room to move around, and there won't be any traffic jams. He can do that. Or look at Dwarka, when Krishna was in Dwarka. Now, Bhagavatam mentions that Krishna had 16,108 queens, and every queen was living with Krishna separately in a separate palace. And from every queen, Krishna had 10 sons and one daughter each. And all of his 10 sons, all the sons from all the queens, they again got married, and everybody had 10 sons and one daughter each. And they all had separate palaces. And this was just Krishna. Then there were queens of Balramji, there were queens of Maharaj Ugrasen, different queens. There were other ministers and the generals and the local people. And it is said that to teach the sons and the grandsons of Krishna, there were millions and millions of teachers. And everybody must be living in their own houses. And Bhagavatam does not mention that there were any skyscraper buildings. Means they were like single story homes, or at the most double story. And there were parks, there were highways, there were ponds, there were marketplaces. And Maharaj Ugrasen, you know how many attendants he had? It's mentioned in Bhagavatam. I'm not making it up. When we come to that section, we'll read that. 1 trillion, not million, not billion, 1 trillion attendants he had. And everybody must be having their own houses to live in. And Dwarka is, when we go there, it's a very small place, even smaller than, I would say, Gurgaon. How will everybody fit in there? If Krishna wants to do anything, he can do anything, everything. There's no problem. So that is Krishna. So if he can fit innumerable living entities in one universe, and there are innumerable universes, and the spiritual world is 3 times as big as the material universe, and everybody can fit in there comfortably, not a problem for Krishna. That's God. That's his opulence. Text 18. So amritasya abhyasyeshu martyam mannam yadati gat mahimeshtato brahman purushasya duratyaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a controller of immortality and fearlessness, and he is transcendental to death and the fruitive actions of the material world. O Narad, O Brahman, it's therefore difficult to measure the glories of the Supreme Person. So Brahmaji is saying it's difficult to measure the glories of Krishna. The glories of the Lord in the transcendental 75% of the Lord's internal potency are stated in the Padma Purana, Uttarakhand. It is said there that those planets in the spiritual sky, which comprises the 75% expansion of the internal potency of the Lord, are far, far greater than those planets in the total universes composed of the external potency of the Lord. Means that planets in the spiritual world are far, far greater. Obviously, they're much, much greater than the planets here in the material world. But because scientists or people who don't have faith in it, they act like that Kupamandu, the frog in the well. They'll question these figures given in Bhagavatam. They will say, no, the frog in the well said, okay, how big is the ocean? Is it 2 times as big as my well? Is it 3 times as big as my well? Because we haven't seen anything beyond the well, so we cannot even fathom what the spiritual world would look like. But it's there. Many times people ask these questions. How do you know it's the truth? Whatever is in Bhagavatam is truth. Okay, even without going into the acharya or self-realized soul's logic, I mean, I asked somebody when I was there in India, and I asked him, who is the president of United States? He said at that time, President Obama was the president. He said, President Obama. I said, how do you know? Oh, he said, well, we have seen it on TV, we have read it on the internet, newspaper. I said, that is your source of news, right? TV, internet, or newspaper. How do you know the reporters are telling you the truth? I said, how would you know? The reporters are telling you the truth. Whatever is in the newspaper is right. Whatever is in the TV, it's right. Whatever the internet says, it's right. Maybe it's some other person is the president and they're telling you it's wrong. He said, no, why would they lie? I said, then why would Ved Vyasi lie? Why would all the sages, who are all the self-realized souls, They have no ulterior motive. They have no businesses going on by which they're going to make money. Why would they tell lies in all the scriptures? I said, you haven't met President Obama. You just believe what's in the newspaper and what's on the internet. So why can't we believe what's in the scriptures? So he got convinced. In one of the universes, okay, no, previously, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the total universes in the external potency of the Lord are compared to a bucket full of mustard seeds. One mustard seed is calculated to be a universe itself. In one of the universes in which we are now living, the number of planets cannot be counted by human energy. So, how can we think of the sum total in all the universes, which are compared to a bucket full of mustard seeds? So, how many mustard seeds can be there in a bucket? Innumerable, we can't even count. So, this is how it's compared. And the planets in the spiritual sky are at least three times the number of those in the material sky. Such planets, being spiritual, are in fact transcendental to the material modes. Therefore, they are constituted in the mode of unalloyed goodness only. So, unalloyed goodness means it's not even material goodness in the spiritual world, it's beyond material goodness level. The conception of spiritual bliss, Brahmananda, is fully present in those planets. Each of them is eternal, indestructible, and free from all kinds of inebrities experienced in the material world. Each of them is self illuminating and more powerfully dazzling than, if we can imagine, the total sunshine of millions of mundane suns. The inhabitants of those planets are liberated from birth, death, old age, and diseases, and have full knowledge of everything. Means the knowledge is there. Every soul is full of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So Chit means knowledge. So there, every soul has come or being enlightened to the constitutional position. When we fall in material world, we forget because we get covered over by the material modes. Our consciousness gets covered over. So we forget so many things. But the soul is full of knowledge. So when we go back to spiritual world, we come back to our original constitutional position where we know everything. They're all godly and free from all sorts of material hankerings. They have nothing to do there except to render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Narayana, who is a predominating deity of such Vaikuntha planets. Those liberated souls are engaged incessantly in singing songs mentioned in the Sam Veda. All of them are personifications of the five Upanishads. Tripad Vibhuti, or the 75% known as the internal potency of the Lord, is to be understood as a kingdom of God far beyond the material sky. And when we speak of Pad Vibhuti, or 25% comprising his external energy, we should understand that this refers to the sphere of the material world. It's also said in the Padma Puran that the kingdom of Tripad Vibhuti is transcendental, whereas the Pad Vibhuti is mundane. Tripad Vibhuti is eternal, whereas the Pad Vibhuti is transient or temporary. The Lord and his eternal servitors in the transcendental kingdom all have eternal forms which are auspicious, infallible, spiritual, and eternally youthful. In other words, there is no birth, death, old age, and disease. That eternal land is full of transcendental enjoyment and full of beauty and bliss. This very fact is also corroborated in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the transcendental nature is described as Amrit. As described in Vedas, the Supreme Lord is a Lord of immortality, or in other words, the Lord is immortal. And because he is a Lord of immortality, he can award immortality to his devotees. So Lord is immortal, Amrit, and he can make his devotees also Amrit, Amar. Of course, soul is always Amar. Soul is not going to die. But because we are in the material world and we're going to change the body, it looks like we are dying. But in spiritual world, there is no more change of body, no death. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also assures that whoever may go to his abode of immortality shall never return to this mortal land of threefold miseries. So we will never come back. The Lord is not like the mundane Lord. The mundane master or Lord never enjoys equally with his subordinates. Nor is a mundane Lord immortal, nor can he award immortality to his subordinates. The Supreme Lord, who is the leader of all living entities, can award all the qualities of his personality unto his devotees, including immortality and spiritual bliss. The greatest fear in the material world is of death actually. Everybody is afraid of dying. Those who evolve themselves spiritually, they are not afraid of it. Of course, some of them who are just a show off, they are still afraid of death. But but most of the people, 99% of people in the material world, they're afraid of death. But the spiritual world, look, Prabhupada again and again talks about immortality, and he says Krishna is immortal and he can award immortality to his devotees. In the material world, there is always anxiety or fearfulness in the heart of all living entities. But the Lord, him being himself, the supreme fearless, who also awards the same quality of fearlessness to his pure devotees. Mundane existence is itself a kind of fear because in all mundane bodies, the effects of birth, death, old age, and disease always keep a living being compact in fear. In the mundane world, there is always influence of time, which changes things from one stage to another. And the living entity, originally being avikar or unchangeable, suffers a great deal on account of changes due to the influence of time. The changing effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent in the immortal kingdom of God, which should therefore be understood to have no influence of time and therefore no fear whatsoever. See, here in mundane world, material world, everything changes by time. Means everything is temporary and everything is fallible. And everything, like our position, our body, our every situation changes with time. And that's what makes people afraid. What I have right now, I might lose it tomorrow. And this is what makes people afraid, fearful. But in the spiritual world, Prabhupada is saying, the effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent. Means the time is there. It's not that time is not there. Time is there. But the effect of time means effect of time to make everything changeable. That is not there. The effect that is shown in the material world, that is not there. The influence of time is not there. Means if a person is 16-year-old, he remains 16 years old eternally. He's not going to grow old. If a person is beautiful, he will remain beautiful. Of course, everybody is beautiful in the spiritual world, but person remains as beautiful. He doesn't have to put on makeup or go through some surgery or dye his hair color black to look beautiful. He will always be beautiful. The time is there to help to serve Krishna in his pastimes with Radharani and his devotees. Means it becomes morning, it becomes afternoon, it becomes evening, it becomes night. Whichever way time can serve Krishna in his pastimes for his pleasure, time is there. But time does not make anybody grow old or anybody forgetful of anything. That is spiritual world. In the material world, so-called happiness is a result of one's own work. One can become a rich man by dint of one's own hard labor. And there are always fear and doubts as to the duration of such acquired happiness. But in the kingdom of God, no one has to endeavor to attain a standard of happiness. Happiness is the nature of the spirit, as stated in Vedanta Sutra, Anandamayo Abhyasa. So the spirit soul is full of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So Ananda is the nature. The spirit soul is always happy, always enjoying. Happiness in spiritual nature always increases in volume with a new phase of appreciation. And there is no question of decreasing the bliss. So it's always increasing. It's not that there is a limit to happiness. Happiness is always increasing. And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says in Shikshashtakam. Anand Ambudhi Vardhanam. That is, by chanting of holy names, one comes to that level of Anand Ambudhi. Ambudhi means ocean. Like it's an ocean of bliss and it is always increasing. Such unalloyed spiritual bliss is nowhere to be found within the orbit of the material universe, including the Janaloka planets, or for that matter, the Maharloka or Satyaloka planets, because even Lord Brahma is subject to the laws of fruitive actions and the law of birth and death. It's therefore stated here, Duratyaya, or in other words, spiritual happiness in the eternal kingdom of God cannot be imagined even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis who are eligible to be promoted to the planets beyond the region of heaven. Or the greatness of the Supreme Lord is so great that it cannot be imagined even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis. But such happiness is factually attained by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord, by His divine grace, by His grace, by His mercy. The unalloyed devotees, the pure devotees of the Lord can experience that happiness, that bliss. And that is what keeps us going. Because we do experience not that kind of bliss, that means the bliss that Prabhupada is mentioning, of some happiness we do enjoy, do achieve, do experience in chanting and doing other services. And that's what keeps us going in the spiritual life and to make more and more progress. So I'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice class, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Why it is so difficult for a soul to take the message of scriptures? I might have joined late.
Well, at least you joined on a weekday. That is great. Many reasons are there. First, he might meet some cheating guru. Well, a guru who cheats is not a guru. So a cheating person who cheats him, gives him the wrong message. That's why they don't take it up seriously, or they have no faith. Or because of their own laziness, they don't do the spiritual practices properly, so they won't get the taste, or the offensive nature. There are many things. One has to be very clean, very simple at heart, actually, to make progress. But that simplicity is not there. And that's why we don't experience the bliss, and that's why we don't, either we don't have faith, or we lose the faith, or then we give it up. This is Kali Yuga. We have to remember that.
Thank you,
So
Prabhu.
anyway, we keep on trying, we keep on preaching, and if not even preaching, we at least give prasadam. Everybody loves prasadam.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the wonderful class.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So I guess we can stop here. You all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna, Prabhupada. Jai Shri Ram.
Hey.
Krishna Prabhupada, thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.